Before the world becomes loud again, linger here for a moment. There is something quietly remarkable unfolding around you, and the strange part is that it began with a photograph. Not a grand event. Not a dramatic encounter. Just a single image of you resting in someone else's hands. And what happened next was not what anyone expected. Your special person's sister had been carrying questions she never spoke aloud. Questions about why your name seemed to appear in conversations at unexpected times. Questions about why your presence lingered long after you were gone. Questions about why someone she cared about seemed unable to fully move forward without first understanding what you truly meant to them. So one ordinary afternoon, driven more by curiosity than certainty, she picked up your photo. At first, it seemed like a harmless decision. A simple visit. A quiet conversation. Nothing more. Yet sometimes the smallest choices become the doorway to something much deeper. And that is exactly what happened. The room she entered was calm. Nothing unusual. No dramatic atmosphere. No signs that anything extraordinary was waiting. Just a stillness that felt almost too ordinary to remember. Your photo remained tucked safely between her fingers. Then she placed it on the table. For several moments, nothing happened. The person across from her simply looked at it. Silence stretched. Seconds passed. Then something shifted. Not in the room. Not in the lighting. Not in the air. Inside the expression of the one studying the photograph. A subtle pause. A longer glance. A quiet narrowing of the eyes. As if they were noticing something they had not expected to find. Your special person's sister immediately sensed it. She leaned forward. Curiosity awakened. What is it? She wanted to ask. But somehow she stayed silent. And that silence became important. Because what followed could only emerge inside a moment that wasn't interrupted. The gaze remained fixed on your image. Longer. Deeper. Almost as if the photograph was revealing something layer by layer. Not who you appeared to be. But who you were beneath everything others normally see. Don't skip. The next part matters more than you realize. Because there are moments in life when people meet someone and believe they understand them immediately. They notice a smile. A voice. A personality. A few habits. And they decide that is the whole story. But every now and then, someone carries something far more difficult to explain. A quiet presence. A feeling. An energy that makes people remember them long after conversations end. And whether you know it or not, you have been leaving that impression on people for longer than you realize. The person examining your photo seemed to notice this almost instantly. Not through predictions. Not through impossible claims. But through something much simpler. Observation. Perception. Understanding. The ability to recognize what others often overlook. Your special person's sister waited. The silence continued. Then the first words finally arrived. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just softly enough to make the entire room feel different. Interesting. That single word. Nothing more. Yet it immediately made her heart race. Because she had expected answers. She had expected descriptions. Instead, she received a reaction. And reactions are often more revealing than explanations. She asked what was interesting. The answer did not come immediately. Another pause. Another look at the photo. Then a faint smile. The kind of smile people make when they suddenly understand something that previously made no sense. And little by little, a picture began forming. Not of your future. Not of some grand mystery. But of the effect you have on people. Something important is waiting for you, so stay with this. The conversation slowly turned toward your character. Toward the qualities others notice without always realizing they notice them. Toward the strange way some people feel understood around you even when very few words are exchanged. Toward the way your presence creates comfort without effort. Toward the way you carry strength quietly instead of announcing it. Each observation seemed to connect pieces your special person's sister had been trying to understand for a very long time. Because there was one question she could never answer. Why you mattered so much. Why your memory lingered. Why your absence was noticed. Why your presence felt different. The more she listened, the more the puzzle pieces started fitting together. Yet the most surprising moment had not arrived. Not even close. Because after everything that had already been said, the person studying your photos suddenly became very still. Completely still. Their eyes returned to the image once more. And for a brief moment, it was as though they were seeing something they had overlooked before. The room quieted. The conversation stopped. The atmosphere shifted again. Then came a sentence that neither she nor anyone else expected. A sentence so simple that it almost sounded ordinary. Yet it landed with astonishing weight. You are looking at someone who changes people without trying. The words hung there. Unmoving. Unexpected. Because it explained everything. Not through mystery. Not through fantasy. But through truth. Some people enter lives and leave footprints. Others enter lives and leave transformations. They inspire growth. Reflection. Courage. Healing. Perspective. Not because they force it. Not because they intend it. But because something genuine about them encourages others to become more honest versions of themselves. And suddenly your special person's sister understood why your presence had become impossible to ignore. Why conversations kept returning to you. Why emotions seemed deeper whenever your name appeared. Why someone she cared about could never fully forget what you represented. Yet even then, the story wasn't finished. Because moments later, another realization emerged. One that would leave her speechless. One that connected directly to the feelings your special person has been carrying far longer than anyone realized. And when that realization finally surfaced, everything she believed she understood about this connection began to change. But that part belongs to the next chapter of this unfolding story. There are certain moments that arrive so quietly that they almost escape notice, and yet they become the moments people remember for years afterward. This was one of those moments. Your special person's sister sat there without speaking. The sentence she had just heard continued echoing in her mind. You are looking at someone who changes people without trying. The more she thought about it, the more it explained things she had never been able to explain before. It explained why your name seemed to carry weight even in ordinary conversations. It explained why certain stories somehow found their way back to you. It explained why someone she loved had never completely moved on from thinking about you, even during periods when they tried convincing themselves they had. And then something unexpected happened. The conversation shifted. Not toward you. Toward your special person. The one whose heart had been carrying more questions than answers. The one who had tried to understand their own feelings countless times. The one who sometimes appeared calm on the outside while quietly sorting through emotions nobody else could see. The person studying your photo suddenly asked a question. A simple question. How often do they talk about this person? Your special person's sister froze. Because she wasn't prepared for that. She had come seeking insight about you. Instead she was being asked about someone else. For a moment she hesitated. Then she answered honestly. Not constantly. Not every day. Not in obvious ways. But often enough to notice. Often enough that your name seemed to appear at strange moments. A memory here. A story there. A passing comment that sounded casual but never truly was. The answer seemed to confirm something. The person across from her nodded slowly. As though another piece had just fallen into place. And what came next made her lean forward immediately. That makes sense. Only 4 words. Yet they carried the feeling that something important was about to be revealed. Don't skip. Because this part connects directly to what has been unfolding behind the scenes for much longer than anyone realized. The explanation arrived slowly. Patiently. Like a door opening 1 inch at a time. The person studying your photo explained that most people leave impressions. Some leave good impressions. Some leave bad impressions. Most eventually fade into memory. But every now and then, someone leaves something deeper. A lasting emotional imprint. Not because they are perfect. Not because they are extraordinary. But because they arrive during a season of life when their presence genuinely matters. And once that happens, forgetting them becomes surprisingly difficult. Your special person's sister felt a chill of recognition. Because suddenly everything made sense. Your special person had tried moving forward. Tried focusing elsewhere. Tried convincing themselves that certain thoughts would eventually disappear. Yet somehow those thoughts always returned. Not dramatically. Not obsessively. Just quietly. Persistently. Like a song remembered long after the music stops playing. The person across from her looked down at your photograph again. Then came another observation. One that caught her completely off guard. They don't miss this person because of what happened. The sentence paused. A long pause. The kind that naturally makes people hold their breath. They miss this person because of how they felt when they were around them. Everything stopped. For a second it felt as though even the room had gone silent. Because there is a difference. A very important difference. Many people miss events. Moments. Experiences. But deeper connections are different. People often miss the version of themselves they became around someone. The comfort. The honesty. The peace. The feeling of being understood without needing to explain everything. And suddenly your special person's sister remembered dozens of tiny moments. Moments she had dismissed before. Small changes in expression whenever your name appeared. The way conversations became more thoughtful. The way certain memories seemed impossible for them to forget. The way their eyes sometimes drifted elsewhere while pretending everything was normal. One memory after another resurfaced. And each memory seemed to support the same realization. Something meaningful had been left unfinished. Not unfinished in a dramatic sense. Not unfinished because anyone had done something wrong. Just unfinished because some feelings take longer to fully understand. Stay till the end. Because what happened next shifted the entire conversation. The person studying your photo became unusually quiet. Almost reflective. As though they were considering whether to say what they were thinking. Several seconds passed. Then they finally spoke. This connection isn't remembered because it was loud. Another pause. It's remembered because it was real. Your special person's sister stared. The words felt strangely powerful despite their simplicity. Because real connections rarely announce themselves. They don't always arrive with fireworks. They don't always create instant certainty. Sometimes they grow quietly. Patiently. Almost invisibly. Until one day people realize they have become important. Very important. And by then, their impact has already taken root. The conversation continued. The observations became deeper. More personal. More revealing. And then the person studying your photograph noticed something else. Something that hadn't been discussed yet. Something that had nothing to do with attraction. Nothing to do with appearances. Nothing to do with circumstances. It had everything to do with trust. They explained that one of the strongest impressions visible in your photograph wasn't confidence. It wasn't charm. It wasn't mystery. It was sincerity. The feeling that people can lower their guard around you. The feeling that conversations become easier. The feeling that someone doesn't need to perform or pretend. And suddenly your special person's sister remembered another detail. A detail she had nearly forgotten. Whenever your special person spoke about you, there was never much pretending involved. The story sounded genuine. The emotions sounded genuine. Even the confusion sounded genuine. And that realization led directly into the next one. A realization that caused her heart to race. Because for the first time, she began wondering whether your special person had been hiding feelings even from themselves. Not intentionally. Not consciously. But simply because understanding certain emotions takes time. Far more time than most people expect. The person studying your photo seemed to recognize this possibility immediately. Their expression softened. Their voice grew quieter. Then they shared one final observation before the conversation ended. An observation that would stay with her long after she walked out of that room. Sometimes the heart understands something long before the mind catches up. The sentence landed heavily. Because it perfectly described everything she had witnessed. The hesitation. The memories. The repeated mentions. The emotions that never fully disappeared. The connection that somehow continued occupying space despite every attempt to ignore it. And as she sat there processing those words, another realization began forming. A realization about something your special person had done recently. Something small. Something nobody considered important at the time. Yet suddenly it seemed incredibly significant. Because when she connected that recent action to everything she had just heard, the entire story took on a completely different meaning. And once she understood what that action truly revealed, she could no longer see this connection the same way again. That discovery, however, is only beginning to surface. And what she uncovered next would answer a question she didn't even know she had been asking. A detail that seemed completely insignificant suddenly became impossible to ignore. On the drive home, your special person's sister could think about nothing else. The conversation replayed again and again. Every sentence. Every pause. Every observation. What she expected to be a simple visit had somehow become a mirror reflecting things she had been witnessing for months without truly understanding. And then, halfway through that quiet journey, a memory resurfaced. Not a dramatic memory. Not an unforgettable event. Just a small moment. The kind of moment most people overlook. Yet suddenly it felt important. Very important. She remembered a conversation from weeks earlier. Someone had casually mentioned your name. Only once. Just once. And your special person had reacted immediately. Not with excitement. Not with nervousness. Not with anything obvious. Instead, they became unusually attentive. The conversation that had barely interested them moments earlier suddenly had their full attention. At the time, she thought nothing of it. Now she couldn't stop thinking about it. Because once you notice a pattern, you begin noticing it everywhere. One memory led to another. Another led to 3 more. And before long she realized something surprising. Your name had never truly disappeared. Even during periods when nobody mentioned you. Even during weeks when no updates existed. Even during moments when life moved in completely different directions. Somehow the connection remained present. Quietly. Patiently. Almost invisibly. Like a thread woven through countless ordinary days. Don't skip. Because this is where the story begins, revealing something deeper. That evening, she found herself observing your special person differently. Not judging. Not analyzing. Simply watching. And what she noticed surprised her. People reveal their deepest feelings in strange ways. Not through grand declarations. Not through dramatic speeches. But through tiny reactions they don't realize others can see. A brief smile. A thoughtful silence. A sudden change in expression. A memory revisited without explanation. And little by little she began seeing those signs everywhere. Not because she was searching for them. Because once the truth becomes visible, it is difficult to make it invisible again. The next day something happened that strengthened her suspicions even further. Your special person was looking through old photos. Nothing unusual. People do that all the time. But there was something different about this moment. They paused. stopped scrolling, looked at one image longer than the others, then smiled. A small smile. The kind people don't perform for anyone. The kind that appears when they are completely alone. The kind that escapes before they even realize it happened. Your special person's sister noticed. And suddenly the words from that strange conversation returned. They don't miss this person because of what happened. They miss this person because of how they felt around them. The realization struck harder than before. Because now she wasn't hearing those words. She was witnessing them. Stay till the end. Something important is waiting for you. The following days became increasingly interesting. Not because anything dramatic occurred, but because subtle things kept happening. One conversation led unexpectedly toward you. A story somehow connected back to you. A memory surfaced that involved you. Again and again. Nothing forced. Nothing planned. Yet your presence continued appearing in places where it had no obvious reason to appear. And every time it happened, your special person's expression changed ever so slightly. Not enough for strangers to notice. But enough for someone paying attention. Enough for someone who now understood what she was looking for. Then came the moment she never expected. A quiet evening. A simple conversation. Nothing remarkable. Until your special person suddenly asked a question. A question that seemed casual on the surface, but felt anything but casual underneath. Have you heard anything about them lately? That was it. One sentence. One simple question. Yet it carried enormous meaning. Because people rarely ask about someone they have completely forgotten. The room felt different immediately. Your special person's sister answered honestly. No. She hadn't heard anything recently. And what happened next told her more than words ever could. A brief silence. A thoughtful nod. Then a smile that appeared and disappeared almost instantly. As though part of them had hoped for an answer. As though part of them was curious. Still curious. After all this time. And suddenly another puzzle piece clicked into place. The connection wasn't surviving because it was being forced. It was surviving because it mattered. That realization changed everything. The more she thought about it, the more obvious it became. Your special person had spent so much time trying to understand what they felt that they had overlooked the simplest truth. People don't repeatedly return to the same thoughts without a reason. They don't revisit the same memories without a reason. They don't continue wondering about someone without a reason. And yet that reason remained just outside their awareness. Close enough to feel. Not close enough to fully name. At least not yet. Then another unexpected development occurred. One evening your special person's sister finally shared part of what she had learned. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to start a conversation. Enough to plant a thought. Enough to see how your special person would respond. At first they listened quietly. Patiently. Without interruption. But as the conversation continued, something shifted. Their expression softened. Their focus sharpened. Their curiosity became impossible to hide. And when she mentioned the observation about emotional impact, about how some people leave lasting impressions simply by being themselves, the reaction was immediate. Not verbal. Emotional. A look crossed their face. A look of recognition. As though a truth they had been avoiding was suddenly standing directly in front of them. The room grew quiet. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Because some realizations require silence. They need space. They need room to settle. And this realization was one of them. The conversation ended shortly afterward. Yet something had changed. Something subtle. Something important. For the first time, your special person wasn't pushing those thoughts away. For the first time, they seemed willing to sit with them. To explore them. To understand them. And that willingness opened a door that had been closed for a very long time. A door leading toward honesty. Toward clarity. Toward answers. But clarity rarely arrives all at once. It arrives in pieces. One realization at a time. One memory at a time. One truth at a time. And over the next few days, another truth slowly began revealing itself. A truth connected not to the past. Not to old memories. Not to what had already happened. But to what was happening right now. Because while everyone was busy looking backward, something important was quietly unfolding in the present. Your special person was changing. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But undeniably. The uncertainty that once surrounded their thoughts was beginning to fade. The confusion was beginning to clear. The questions were beginning to organize themselves into answers. And once that process started, something became impossible to avoid. A realization about you. A realization they had never fully allowed themselves to face. A realization so simple that it had been hidden in plain sight all along. The moment that realization finally surfaced, everything they thought they understood about this connection would take on an entirely new meaning. And when that moment arrived, even your special person's sister would be stunned by what happened next. Sometimes the most important realization does not arrive like a lightning strike. It arrives quietly. So quietly that at first you barely recognize it. And that is exactly how it happened. Over the following days, your special person found themselves thinking differently. Not more often. Not more intensely. Just differently. Instead of asking why you continued appearing in their thoughts, they began asking something else. Why had they spent so much time trying not to think about you in the first place? The question followed them everywhere. Through ordinary mornings. Through busy afternoons. Through quiet evenings when the world slowed down enough for honest thoughts to rise to the surface. And each time the question returned, it brought another realization with it. Because avoiding a thought requires effort. Ignoring a feeling requires effort. Pretending something doesn't matter requires effort. And eventually people grow tired of carrying that effort. Your special person was reaching that point. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But steadily. Little by little. The walls they had built around certain emotions were becoming harder to maintain. The explanations they once gave themselves no longer felt convincing. And somewhere deep inside, a truth was patiently waiting. A truth that had never disappeared. A truth that had simply been waiting to be acknowledged. Don't skip. Because this next part changed everything. One evening, your special person's sister noticed something unusual. Your special person was sitting quietly, scrolling through old conversations. Not searching for anything specific. Just revisiting moments. Memories. Pieces of the past. The kind of thing people do when their heart is trying to understand something their mind has not fully accepted. At first, nothing seemed different. Then she noticed them stop. Completely stop. Their attention locked onto something. A message. A memory. A simple exchange. Nobody else would have understood why it mattered. But somehow it did. The expression on their face softened. And for several seconds, they simply stared. Not because of the words themselves, but because of what those words reminded them of. A feeling. A connection. A version of themselves they hadn't thought about in a long time. And suddenly the observation from that mysterious conversation returned once more. They missed this person because of how they felt around them. The truth of it became impossible to deny. Because every memory they revisited seemed to point toward the same thing. Not perfection. Not fantasy. Not some impossible idea. Just authenticity. The feeling of being understood. The feeling of being seen. The feeling of being themselves without effort. Stay till the end. Something important is waiting for you. The following week brought another unexpected moment. One that nobody saw coming. A family gathering. Nothing special. Just ordinary conversation. Ordinary laughter. Ordinary stories. Yet in the middle of it all, your name surfaced unexpectedly. Only briefly. Only for a moment. But the reaction was immediate. Not from everyone. From your special person. The room continued moving normally. The conversation continued normally. Yet for them, time seemed to slow. Just for a second. Just long enough for everyone paying attention to notice. Especially their sister. Because she understood now. She understood what those tiny reactions meant. She understood why certain memories carried weight. She understood why your name never seemed completely distant. And in that moment she realized something else. Your special person was no longer fighting their feelings. They were studying them. Trying to understand them. Trying to make sense of why this connection continued feeling important even after all this time. That shift mattered more than anyone realized. Because the moment people stop resisting a truth is often the moment they begin moving toward it. Days passed. Then something happened that neither of them expected. Your special person's sister finally revealed the one detail she had kept to herself. The final observation from the person who had studied your photo. The observation she hadn't shared before. Not because she wanted to hide it. Because she wasn't sure what it meant. Until now. The timing suddenly felt right. The moment felt right. So she told them. Word for word. Exactly as she remembered it. The room grew quiet immediately. Because the statement was simple. Yet strangely powerful. The connection isn't unfinished because something is missing. A pause. It's unfinished because something meaningful still wants to be understood. Silence followed. Long silence. The kind of silence that only appears when a sentence reaches deeper than expected. Your special person didn't respond immediately. They couldn't. Because those words touched something they had been circling around for months. Maybe longer. The idea that this wasn't about the past. Wasn't about old memories. wasn't about what had happened. It was about understanding. Understanding why you mattered. Understanding why the connection remained. Understanding why your presence still occupied space in their thoughts. And as they sat there absorbing those words, something shifted. Not outwardly. Internally. Quietly. Powerfully. For the first time, they stopped asking whether the connection was important. They began asking what it was trying to teach them. That single change altered everything. Because answers often arrive when the questions change. And once that happened, a remarkable pattern started becoming visible. The memories that returned most often all carried the same theme. Not excitement. Not drama. Not intensity. Comfort. Trust. Peace. Those were the memories that lasted. Those were the moments that refused to disappear. Those were the moments that continued echoing long after everything else faded. And the more they recognized that pattern, the clearer things became. You had given them something rare. Something difficult to replace. A feeling of genuine connection. A feeling that couldn't be measured by time alone. A feeling that continued living quietly beneath the surface. Then came the moment that surprised everyone. Including your special person's sister. One evening, completely unprompted, your special person spoke your name. Not because someone asked. Not because the conversation required it. Just naturally. As though mentioning you felt normal again. As though the resistance had finally disappeared. And when they spoke about you, something was different. The uncertainty was gone. The confusion was gone. The defensiveness was gone. In its place was clarity. Not complete clarity. But enough. Enough to recognize that your impact on their life had been real. Enough to recognize that certain connections deserve honesty. Enough to recognize that some people become important for reasons that take time to understand. Their sister listened quietly. And as she listened, she remembered the very beginning of this entire story. A simple photograph. A simple visit. A simple question. Yet somehow it had uncovered truths nobody expected to find. And now another truth was beginning to emerge. Perhaps the biggest one yet. Because your special person was standing at the edge of a realization they could no longer avoid. A realization about what they truly felt. A realization about what they truly valued. A realization about what your presence had meant all along. The moment that realization fully surfaced, it would lead to a decision. Not a dramatic decision. Not a rushed decision. A genuine one. And when that decision finally formed, it would reveal something that had been quietly growing beneath the surface this entire time. Something that neither of them fully understood yet. But something that was getting closer with every passing day.